Hey, what's up guys, Matt with the Movement System. In this video, we're gonna cover some exercises to effectively build strength and conditioning as a swimmer. Swimmers have some unique demands that are placed on their body that present differently than other athletes. So I wanna talk about how to specifically prepare for the sport of swimming with weight room training. I found this to be really important as a triathlete myself, as well as for all the swimmers that I worked with as a high school strength conditioning coach, as a physical therapist, and as an intern strength coach for Ohio State Olympic Sports, working with their swimmers. Especially competitive swimmers who are building up to really long distances and a lot of time in the pool, there are unique demands placed to the core and the back that we want to adequately prepare for to set us up for best performance as well as health. So while there are a ton of options of things that we can do in the gym, I want to simplify this and focus on 4 things that are really essential that swimmers are hitting with their strength conditioning to set themselves up for the best success. Let's go and dive into it. All right, the first thing that we want to cover that is an essential piece of a strength conditioning program for swimmers is anterior core strength. The position of being in the pool with a lot of back extension, and this is true for freestyle as well as other strokes, it places a lot of compressive stress through the back, and a lot of swimmers can get irritation through their lower back, especially as they ramp up their swimming volume. What we can do to help reduce this and help reduce that positional discomfort that they're getting in the pool is building anterior core strength, meaning the abs as well as other trunk muscles that are involved in flexion. This is important not only for health, but also for performance, because this is a really big piece of producing power while we're swimming. And one exercise that I've found to be really effective is an exercise ball pike. We're gonna start with that one, and then I'll show you some variations as well. The exercise ball pike involves getting the feet onto the exercise ball and then lifting up the hips. This is going to be performed by 2 different muscle groups. Number 1 is our hip flexor or our psoas muscle group, and then number 2 is our abdominal muscle group. These 2 muscle groups need to work together to flex the hip and flex through the spine and create that bridge through the anterior core. If we can build strength and capacity to handle that flexion, then we're going to reduce that positional discomfort associated with all of the extension in swimming. The way that we want to program this is to build endurance, to be able to hold these positions for a really long time. So with these ball pikes, I would recommend building up to around 20 repetitions. If you can't do that yet with the ball pike, you can regress to this exercise, which is more of a saw exercise. This is where we're gonna saw back and forth. We're gonna be on the forearms. We're gonna hold a rigid trunk position, and we're just gonna push ourselves forward and back. The farther the ball is back towards the toes, the harder this exercise is gonna be. If you position the ball closer to the knee, that's gonna make this exercise a little bit easier. Some things that I've seen done at the college level that are pretty advanced include walks with the ball, where you're actually walking down the turf and you're moving your legs and you're moving your hands while moving the ball down the turf. This is a pretty advanced exercise, but if you want to progress to it, you can do that as well to really build that endurance of the anterior core musculature. I would recommend working it for about 5 to 10 minutes out of your strength training 3 times a week. All right, the second thing that we want to make sure we're incorporating into a swimmer's strength and conditioning program is heavy bilateral, meaning on both legs, loaded exercises. I like the trap bar deadlift as well as a big heavy back squat. These exercises are really important for building an athletic foundation, which a lot of other exercises build upon. So for our plyometrics, for example, if we're not very strong, it doesn't give us a high ceiling to push towards. So we can get really explosive with limited strength, but we're not gonna get quite as far as if we have really good strength and then we train to be explosive. This is why I would recommend training a heavy trap bar deadlift or squat 2 to 3 times a week for swimmers. Also, this is a really good bone mineral density stimulus. I've particularly seen a lot of triathletes who just swam throughout their youth years and then try to take up triathlon have a lot of struggles with stress fractures throughout their lower extremities, throughout their back. And if we can incorporate good quality, heavy strength training, as well as plyometric training into our swimmers' routines throughout their youth years, where they're really developing good bone mineral density, that can really help them, especially throughout their later years when they might switch to running and other sports. Don't overcomplicate this one. It's pretty basic. You're just gonna put heavy weights on. You're gonna train anywhere from 3 to 8 repetitions, make them challenging, and progress from week to week. All right, now the third essential component of a swimming strength and conditioning program is going to be plyometrics. This is another really important piece of building bone mineral density. Bone mineral density means that we're building the density of the bones of our hips, of our back, of our knees, And that's going to help reduce the risk of stress fractures later on in life, especially if we're taking up running or triathlon after a long swimming career. It's also important for swimming itself. I know a lot of swimmers like to do their strength training next to the pool. This is one that I would recommend not doing next to the pool because I don't want you to slip as you're landing from your jumps. The specific exercise that I would recommend starting with is just straight up jumping up and down. There have been some studies that showed just jumping as high as you can and landing 10 times for 3 sets, 3 times a week, was enough to be a significant bone mineral density stimulus for youth athletes. If our youth athletes are spending all of their time in the pool and they're not getting out for other sports to be able to run and jump, then it's really important that we incorporate some amount of this into training. It can be as little as jumping 30 times, 3 times a week. Importantly, you want to make sure that we have the jumping and the landing forces. So a lot of people do like to start with box jumps. I think that's okay, but it's even better if we can incorporate some landing forces because that's where we're really going to get the bone stress that we need to get the adequate stimulus for building bones for our swimmers. If you want to go even more advanced than just jumping and landing, and you want to take it to the next level, you can do things like broad jumps where we're jumping forward and covering as much ground as possible, or you can even start to add dumbbells to our jumps. For swimmers who are going to be doing bilateral 2-legged kicks off the wall, I do like 2-legged jumps to prepare for that and to build power for that. It makes them feel sport specific. It makes them understand that this is also going to carry over to performance and it's not just for their health. So incorporating some broad jumps, some vertical jumps, and even some loaded jumps into their program a few times a week can be really beneficial. All right, the fourth aspect of strength conditioning that we want to cover for swimming is what we call energy system development. This is a complicated way of saying our cardiovascular and our other energy systems, we want to develop those so that way we have a higher capacity to be able to swim. There's a lot of different schools of thought on this, and I was actually just talking to a swimmer who trained for the Olympics. He trained in the USA, he also trained in Russia, and he was talking about how a lot of swimmers in Russia actually will do a really big aerobic base training phase where they're training low intensity and for long duration, even if they're a sprint swimmer. The idea with building a big, strong aerobic base is it's going to help us recover from our training better. Overall, conditioning and energy system development could look a lot of different ways. We could be using sleds, we could be doing some treadmill work, we could be working on a bike, and a lot of this can actually come from being in the pool and practicing as well. Some things that I like and I would recommend is light sleds, so something like 50% body weight on your sled, but going for distance, so doing a minute on, a minute off, or doing 100 yards, resting for a minute, 100 yards, or doing similar intervals on a bike where you're cranking it for 30 seconds, resting for 30 seconds, cranking for 30 seconds, resting for 30 seconds. Depending on the season that you're in, if you're swimming a ton and you're in season, you're leading up to competition, you might not need a lot from the out of the pool conditioning work, but in your off season, you may hit the sleds, the treadmill, the bikes, and all this conditioning work a little bit harder. If you're a distance swimmer, prioritize a little bit more of that aerobic base work where you're doing lower heart rate for longer distance and longer time. If you're a sprint swimmer, prioritize more of that heavier resistance, fast, twitchy work. All right, I hope that gives you some ideas for what to incorporate into your swimming strength and conditioning work. If you're interested in building strength and conditioning, you can check out some of the programs we have below, and also make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one.